Son-in-law hit me. Daughter pulled my hair, kicked me out for not leaving them a 5-mamular house. Y'all ain't gonna believe what just happened to me. I'm sitting here in my sister's guest room, ice pack on my jaw, wondering how the daughter I raised with my own 2 hands could do me like this. But let me start from the beginning, because this story's got more twists than a Sunday church service. Chapter 1. The setup that should have been a red flag. My name is Dorothy Mae Washington, and I've been living in Atlanta for 43 years. Started with nothing but a suitcase and a dream when I moved here from Montgomery in 1982. Worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, stocking shelves at Kroger, and doing alterations from my tiny apartment, just to make ends meet. But here's the thing that's got everyone talking. That $5 million house they're all fighting over, I earned every brick of it. See, while other folks were buying lottery tickets and hoping for miracles, I was buying up run-down properties in neighborhoods everybody else was running from. Vine City, Mechanicsville, Pittsburgh, areas that white folks whispered about and middle-class black folks avoided. I saw potential where others saw problems. "Mama, why you want to live around all that mess?" my daughter Keisha used to ask me when she was in high school. This was back in '98 when I bought my first property, a beaten-down Victorian on Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard for $12,000. $12,000! The seller was so eager to get rid of it, he probably would have paid me to take it. I fixed that house up myself. YouTube wasn't around then, so I learned from Mr. Charlie, an old contractor who lived down the street. Taught me everything. Plumbing, electrical, carpentry. My hands were always cut up, fingernails caked with paint and dirt. Keisha was embarrassed to bring friends over. "Dorothy, you working yourself to death," my sister Marlene would say. "Why don't you just get a nice apartment in Decatur like normal people?" Normal people, that phrase used to make my blood boil. Fast forward to 2024, and that same Victorian is worth $1.8 million. The neighborhood that everybody was scared of? It's now called the Historic West Side, and white couples in Range Rovers tour it on weekends, calling it authentic and vibrant. I own 6 properties now. The crown jewel is my main house, a stunning 1920s mansion in West End that I bought for $85,000 in 2003. Spent another $300,000 over the years restoring it to its original glory. Hand-carved banisters, original hardwood floors, stained glass windows that throw rainbows across my living room every morning. That house is worth $5.2 million today. Chapter 2. The daughter I raised, Keisha, was my miracle baby. Had her when I was 22, right after I finished cosmetology school. Her daddy, Marcus, was fine as wine but had commitment issues, meaning he was committed to every woman except me. Left when Keisha was 2, raised her by myself, and I mean by myself. No child support, no family help, just me and that little girl against the world. I made sure she had everything I didn't. Piano lessons at the community center, dance classes at Miss Ruby's studio on Auburn Avenue, good school clothes from Rich's department store, not the thrift shops where I shopped. She was in advanced classes, honor roll, the whole 9 yards. "You're gonna be something special," I used to tell her while braiding her hair every Sunday night. "Education is the one thing nobody can take away from you." And she was special. Got a full scholarship to Spelman College, graduated magna cum laude with a degree in business administration. I was so proud, crying like a baby at her graduation. Thought I had done everything right. She got a good job at a marketing firm downtown, making $65,000 right out of college. Bought herself a nice condo in Buckhead. For a while there, I thought I had raised the perfect daughter. Then she met Brandon. Chapter 3. The son-in-law from hell, Brandon Mitchell, 6'2", light-skinned with good hair, dressed in designer suits that probably cost more than most people's rent. Keisha brought him to Sunday dinner in 2019, and I could tell she was smitten. "Mama, this is Brandon. He's an investment banker at Goldman Sachs." I shook his hand, soft as butter, never done a day of manual labor in his life, but he had a firm grip and looked me in the eye. Said all the right things. "Mrs. Washington, Keisha talks about you all the time. You've raised an incredible woman." Smooth talker. Too smooth. Over the next few months, I watched my daughter change. She started talking different, using words like portfolio and diversification. Started wearing her hair straight instead of natural, buying clothes that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Mama, Brandon says I should invest in mutual funds instead of keeping money in savings, she told me one day. What does Brandon know about your money? I asked. He knows about investments, Mama. That's his job. I bit my tongue, but something didn't sit right. In my experience, men who are too eager to give advice about your money usually want access to it. They got married in 2021. Big fancy wedding at the Georgian Terrace Hotel. I paid for half of it, $35,000, even though Brandon's family clearly had money. His parents showed up in a Bentley, talking about their house in Roswell and their vacation home in Hilton Head. But here's what bothered me. During the wedding planning, Brandon kept making comments about my properties. Mrs. Washington, you've got quite the real estate empire, he said one day when they came by for dinner. Have you thought about liquidating some of those assets? You could live very comfortably off the interest. I'm already living comfortably, I replied, but you could be living luxuriously. Keisha and I could help you manage everything. There it was, the first hint of what was coming. Chapter 4, The Pressure Campaign, begins. After the wedding, the visits became more frequent, and they always came with suggestions. Mama, this house is too big for just you, Keisha would say, walking through my restored Victorian mansion. You could downsize to a nice condo, maybe in one of those senior communities. Senior communities? I laughed. Baby, I'm 60, not 90. But think about it practically, Brandon would chime in. You're sitting on millions of dollars in equity. You could sell this place, buy something smaller, and have money left over to travel. Enjoy life. Enjoy life. As if I wasn't already enjoying the life I built. The conversations escalated after they had their first child, my grandbaby Zoe, in 2022. Suddenly, every visit included comments about building generational wealth and securing the family's future. Mama, you should start thinking about estate planning, Keisha said one day while I was feeding Zoe her bottle. I already have a will, baby. But have you considered setting up a trust? Brandon knows a great lawyer who could help restructure everything. That night, I called my sister Marlene. Girl, they trying to get you to sign over your properties, she said without hesitation. You think so? Dorothy, I've been watching this game for 60 years. When family starts talking about helping you manage your money, run. But I didn't run. I loved my daughter too much. I wanted to believe she had my best interests at heart. Chapter 5. The manipulation gets worse. By 2023, the pressure had become relentless. Brandon started showing up without Keisha, always with some new scheme. Mrs. Washington, I've been looking at your property portfolio, he said one afternoon, uninvited spreadsheets in hand. You could sell the main house and 2 rental properties, clear about $7 million, and I could invest that for you. Conservative estimate, you'd make 10% annually. That's $700,000 a year in passive income. And what would you get out of this? I asked. Just the satisfaction of seeing family taken care of. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. I started noticing other things. Brandon's job at Goldman Sachs, he was actually a junior associate, not the big shot investment banker he pretended to be. Their fancy lifestyle? All financed with credit cards and loans. When I did some digging, I found out they were drowning in debt. Student loans, car payments, credit cards, they owed over $200,000. That's when the real manipulation started. Keisha began bringing Zoe over less frequently. When I asked why, she'd make excuses. We're just so busy, Mama. Between work and the baby. You could come stay here, I offered. I've got plenty of room. This house is too old, Mama. It's not safe for a baby with all these stairs and antique fixtures. My heart broke every time. I'd spent decades making this house perfect, and now my own daughter was calling it dangerous. Then came the emotional blackmail. Mama, I worry about you rattling around in this big house by yourself, Keisha said during one visit. What if something happens? What if you fall and nobody finds you for days? I have neighbors, baby. Miss Geneva next door checks on me every morning. But wouldn't you rather have security? Financial security? If you sell the house, you'd never have to worry about money again. I don't worry about money now. But you could leave something substantial for Zoe. Think about your granddaughter's future. That was the hook they used repeatedly, my grandbaby. Every conversation came back to what I owed Zoe, what kind of grandmother I was if I didn't secure her future. Chapter 6, The Lawyers and the Lies. In early 2024, Brandon started bringing lawyers to family dinners. Mrs. Washington, this is David Chen, one of the best estate planning attorneys in Atlanta, Brandon announced one Sunday, showing up with a stranger in an expensive suit. I didn't invite him, I said. Mom, we just want to make sure you're protected, Keisha jumped in. David can help set up a family trust that would benefit everyone. Mr. Chen spread papers across my dining room table, the same table where I'd helped Keisha with homework for 12 years. Mrs. Washington, your daughter and son-in-law are absolutely right to be concerned, he said. With assets of this magnitude, you need sophisticated tax planning. Without proper structures in place, your estate could lose millions to taxes. They had done their homework. The presentation was polished, professional. They talked about generation-skipping trusts and tax optimization strategies that would supposedly save hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I'd been around long enough to know when somebody was trying to sell me something I didn't need. I'll think about it, I said, gathering up the papers. Mama, you can't keep putting this off, Keisha pressed. Every day you wait, you're potentially losing money. It's my money to lose. That's when I saw a flash of anger in Brandon's eyes. Just for a second, but I caught it. After they left, I called my own lawyer, Miss Patricia Williams, who'd been handling my real estate deals for 15 years. Dorothy, be very careful, she warned me after I explained the situation. These trust arrangements they're proposing would essentially give them control over your assets while you're still alive. Once you sign, it would be very difficult to undo. But what about the tax benefits? Minimal. Your estate isn't large enough to benefit significantly from these complex structures. This sounds like they're trying to get their hands on your money. That night, I made a decision. I was going to stand my ground. Chapter 7, The Confrontation. The showdown came on a Saturday in March 2024. I was in my garden planting tomatoes when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Brandon and Keisha were walking up my front steps, and they both looked angry. We need to talk, Brandon said without so much as a greeting. They sat down in my living room, the room I'd lovingly restored with hand-selected antique furniture and original artwork by local black artists. Mama, we've been patient with you, Keisha started, but this is getting ridiculous. What's getting ridiculous? Your refusal to make responsible financial decisions, Brandon interjected. We've brought you lawyers, financial advisors, tax experts. Everyone agrees that your current situation is financially irresponsible. My current situation is financially successful. For now, Keisha said. But what happens when the real estate market crashes? What happens when you get sick and need expensive medical care? You're being selfish, Mama. Selfish. The word hit me like a slap. I'm being selfish for wanting to keep the property I worked 40 years to acquire? You're being selfish for not thinking about your family, Brandon said, his voice rising. Keisha is your only child. Zoe is your only grandchild. Don't you want to secure their future? I want to secure my future first. You don't need a $5 million house, Keisha exploded. You're one person. It's wasteful and irresponsible. I stood up slowly. My voice was quiet but firm. Baby girl, let me tell you something. This house represents every sacrifice I ever made for you, every double shift I worked, every meal I skipped, every dream I deferred. It all went into building this life. And now you're standing in my living room telling me it's wasteful? That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. You think because I'm 60 years old and didn't go to college like you did, I don't know how to manage money. You think I'm some old fool who needs you and your husband to save me from myself. Brandon stood up too, and I could see the mask slipping. Mrs. Washington, with all due respect, you're being emotional instead of logical. We're trying to help you maximize your assets. No, you're trying to get your hands on my assets. That's ridiculous. Is it? Y'all are drowning in debt. Your credit cards are maxed out. You bought a house in Alpharetta you can't afford, leased cars you can't afford, living a lifestyle you can't sustain, and you think my money is going to solve your problems. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Brandon's true colors showed. Fine, he said, his voice cold. We tried to do this the easy way, but if you're determined to be stubborn, we'll do it the hard way. What's that supposed to mean? It means we have options, legal options. Are you threatening me? I'm stating facts. You're getting older. Sometimes elderly people make poor financial decisions. Sometimes they need family members to step in and protect them from themselves. My blood ran cold. He was talking about having me declared mentally incompetent. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Mama, please, Keisha started. Both of you, get out, now. They left, but Brandon's parting words chilled me to the bone. This isn't over, Mrs. Washington. Chapter 8. The Campaign of Harassment. What followed was 6 months of psychological warfare. They started small. Brandon began showing up at my rental properties, talking to tenants, suggesting that I was an unstable landlord who might sell the buildings at any moment. 2 tenants moved out, costing me thousands in lost rent and turnover expenses. Keisha started a whisper campaign in our family. She called my cousins, my church friends, anyone who would listen, expressing concerns about my mental state. I'm worried about Mama, she'd say. She's becoming paranoid and irrational. She thinks everyone is trying to steal from her. When family members would call to check on me, they'd start the conversation with, Dorothy, are you okay? Keisha says you haven't been yourself lately. The isolation was the worst part. They stopped bringing Zoe to visit. When I called to ask about my grandbaby, Keisha would make excuses. She's napping. She's sick. We're busy. I tried showing up at their house, but Brandon met me at the door. Mrs. Washington, Keisha doesn't want to see you right now. You're causing too much stress in our household. I want to see my granddaughter. Maybe when you're ready to be reasonable about the family's financial future. They were using my grandbaby as leverage. The realization broke my heart. The harassment escalated. I started getting calls from lawyers I'd never heard of, all wanting to discuss estate planning and elder care legal services. When I asked how they got my information, they'd give vague answers. My mailbox was stuffed with brochures for senior living communities, reverse mortgage offers, and companies that buy houses for cash. Someone had clearly put me on every mailing list imaginable. The final straw came when a social worker showed up at my door. Mrs. Washington, I'm Jennifer Martinez from Adult Protective Services. We've received some concerns about your welfare. Concerns from who? I can't share that information, but someone reported that you might be living in unsafe conditions and making questionable financial decisions. I let her in. Let her inspect every inch of my immaculate house. She interviewed me for an hour, clearly looking for signs of dementia or mental instability. Mrs. Washington, your home is beautiful, and you seem perfectly competent to me. I'm going to close this case, but I have to ask, do you have any idea who might have made this report? I knew exactly who had made the report. That night, I called my lawyer. Patricia, they're trying to have me declared incompetent. Dorothy, you need to document everything. Every phone call, every visit, every piece of mail. If they're going to wage war, we need evidence. I can't believe my own daughter is doing this to me. Money changes people, honey, and desperate people do desperate things. Chapter 9. The Attempted Coup. The final confrontation came on a Thursday in September. I was at home reviewing rental applications for one of my properties when I heard my front door open. "Mama," Keisha called out. "In the kitchen, baby." But when I looked up, it wasn't just Keisha. Brandon was with her, along with two men I didn't recognize. "Keisha, who are these people?" "Mama, this is Dr. Richardson and Mr. Stevens. Dr. Richardson is a psychiatrist, and Mr. Stevens is from the probate court." My stomach dropped. "We're here to conduct a mental competency evaluation," Dr. Richardson said, opening a briefcase full of papers. "I didn't agree to any evaluation." "Mrs. Washington," Mr. Stevens said, "your daughter has petitioned the court expressing concerns about your mental fitness. The judge has ordered this evaluation." I looked at Keisha, and for the first time in months, I saw tears in her eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of guilt. "Baby girl, how could you do this to me?" "Mama, we're trying to help you. You're not thinking clearly. You're making decisions that don't make sense." "The only decision that doesn't make sense is trusting you." Dr. Richardson began pulling out forms and questionnaires. "Mrs. Washington, I need you to answer some questions for me. And what if I refuse? Then we'll have to report to the court that you were uncooperative, which won't look good for your case." This was it. This was their master plan. Get me declared mentally incompetent, get themselves appointed as my guardians, and take control of everything I'd worked for. But I wasn't going down without a fight. "Dr. Richardson, before we begin, I'd like to call my attorney." "That's not necessary," Brandon started. "Actually, it's completely necessary. I have rights, and I'm exercising them." I called Patricia, put her on speakerphone. "Patricia, they're trying to have me declared incompetent right here in my kitchen. Dorothy, don't answer any questions until I get there. Gentlemen, I'm advising my client to remain silent until legal counsel arrives." "Mrs. Washington, that's only going to make things worse," Dr. Richardson began. "No, what's going to make things worse is conducting an involuntary mental health evaluation without proper legal representation present." Brandon's facade finally cracked completely. "This is ridiculous. We're family. We're trying to help. You're trying to steal from me. We're not trying to steal anything. We just want what's best for everyone. What's best for you." That's when he snapped. "You know what? Fine. You want to play hardball? You're a selfish old woman who's sitting on millions of dollars while your family struggles." "My family? You've been part of this family for 4 years. I built this wealth over 40 years. And what's going to happen to it when you die? It's all going to get eaten up by taxes. At least if you transfer it now, your daughter and granddaughter could benefit. So that's what this is about. You want me to give you everything while I'm alive so you don't have to wait for me to die." "That's not," Keisha started. "That's exactly what it is. You want me to give up everything I worked for and trust you to take care of me in my old age." The room was silent except for the sound of everyone breathing hard. Then Mr. Stevens spoke up. "Mrs. Gaines, Washington, regardless of family dynamics, we still need to complete this evaluation. Over my dead body." "Mama, please." "No, you brought strangers into my house to declare me crazy so you could steal my property. I will never forgive you for this." That's when Brandon made the biggest mistake of his life. He grabbed my wrist. Chapter 10, The Physical Attack. "Mrs. Washington, you need to calm down," Brandon said, his grip tight on my wrist. "Let go of me." "Not until you agree to cooperate." I tried to pull away, but he tightened his grip. At 60 years old, I'm not as strong as I used to be, but I'm not helpless either. "Brandon, you're hurting me. I'm trying to help you see reason." That's when Keisha joined in. My own daughter, the little girl I used to rock to sleep, whose fever I stayed up all night monitoring, whose heart I helped heal through her first breakup, grabbed my other arm. "Mama, just do the evaluation. It's for your own good. Let go of me, both of you." I was struggling against both of them, and that's when it happened. Brandon drew back his hand and slapped me across the face. The sound echoed through my kitchen like a gunshot. For a moment, everybody froze. Dr. Richardson and Mr. Stevens looked horrified. Keisha's eyes went wide with shock. Then the rage took over. My daughter, my baby girl. Instead of defending me, instead of protecting me from this man who had just struck her mother, grabbed a handful of my hair and yanked. "Mama, stop fighting us. We're trying to help you." The pain was excruciating. She was pulling so hard I thought she was going to rip my hair out by the roots. I screamed. That's when Dr. Richardson finally found his voice. "Stop, everyone stop. This is completely inappropriate. Mr. Stevens, we need to leave immediately." "No!" Brandon shouted. "We're not leaving until she signs the evaluation consent." But Dr. Richardson was already packing up his briefcase. "Sir, I will not be party to elder abuse. This evaluation is terminated." "You can't terminate it. The court ordered it." "The court didn't order physical assault." "Ma'am," he said to me, "do you need medical attention?" My face was throbbing where Brandon had hit me. My scalp was burning where Keisha had pulled my hair. But worse than the physical pain was the emotional devastation. "I need you all to leave my house," I said quietly. "Mama," Keisha started. "Get out!" Mr. Stevens was already headed for the door. "Mrs. Washington, I'll be filing a report about what I witnessed here today." "You'll be filing a report about us trying to help?" Brandon began. "I'll be filing a report about domestic violence and elder abuse." That shut Brandon up real quick. As they were leaving, Keisha turned back to me one more time. "Mama, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen like this." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Her expensive clothes, her perfect makeup, her manicured nails that had just been yanking my hair out. "Yes, you did," I said. "This is exactly what you meant to happen. You just didn't expect witnesses." After they left, I sat in my kitchen for 2 hours, holding ice to my face, trying to process what had just happened. My own daughter had physically attacked me over money. My son-in-law had hit me in my own home. They had tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could steal everything I had worked for. When Patricia arrived, she took one look at me and immediately called the police. Chapter 11. The Legal Battle Begins. The police report was filed. Photos were taken of my bruised face and the bald spot where Keisha had pulled out my hair. Dr. Richardson and Mr. Stevens both gave statements about what they had witnessed. Within 48 hours, restraining orders were issued against both Brandon and Keisha. They were not allowed within 500 feet of me or any of my properties. But the damage was done. "Dorothy, I have to tell you," Patricia said as we sat in her office the following Monday, "they're not going to give up. They've invested too much in this scheme to walk away now." "What do you mean?" "They've hired one of the most expensive elder law firms in Atlanta. They're claiming that your refusal to cooperate with the mental health evaluation proves you're incompetent. They're arguing that your paranoid delusions about them trying to steal from you show diminished mental capacity. But the doctor and the court official witnessed them attack me, and that works in our favor. But elder law is complicated, Dorothy. If they can convince a judge that you need protection from your own poor judgment, they could still get guardianship." The irony was devastating. By trying to protect myself from their theft, I was being painted as mentally unstable. By refusing to give them my money, I was being labeled as making poor financial decisions. The legal fees were astronomical. Patricia was charging $500 an hour, and we were looking at months of litigation. The opposing counsel was charging even more, which made me wonder how Brandon and Keisha were paying for it. Then I found out. They had taken out a second mortgage on their house, using my expected inheritance as collateral. They were literally betting their own home that they would win control of my assets. The desperation was staggering. "Patricia, what if they win?" "They won't win, Dorothy. But I have to be honest with you. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. They're going to attack your character, your judgment, your mental state. Are you prepared for that?" "I've been preparing for that my whole life. But I wasn't really prepared. Nobody could be prepared for what came next. Chapter 12. The Smear Campaign. The attacks on my reputation were swift and vicious. Brandon and Keisha's lawyers subpoenaed my medical records, looking for any evidence of cognitive decline or mental health issues. They found a prescription for antidepressants from 2018, prescribed after my best friend, Miss Ruby, died, and tried to paint it as evidence of long-term mental instability. They interviewed my tenants looking for complaints about my management of the rental properties. When they couldn't find any real issues, they started manufacturing them. Mrs. Washington is becoming increasingly erratic, one tenant suddenly claimed, despite having never mentioned any problems during our monthly interactions. They dug into my financial records, claiming that my investment strategy was risky and irresponsible. The fact that I had successfully built a multi-million-dollar portfolio was somehow twisted into evidence that I was a compulsive gambler who got lucky. But the worst part was the family betrayal. Keisha gave a deposition that broke my heart into a million pieces. My mother has always been paranoid and controlling, she testified under oath. She doesn't trust banks, doesn't trust financial advisors, doesn't trust anyone but herself. She hoards money like it's going to disappear if she doesn't personally watch over it. Hoarding money. That's what she called careful financial management and planning for the future. She lives alone in a house that's too big for her, refuses to consider safer living arrangements, and makes impulsive financial decisions without consulting family. Impulsive financial decisions. Like the time I bought a rental property without asking her permission first. I'm worried that she's going to lose everything she's worked for because she's too stubborn to accept help. The gaslighting was masterful. Every strength was reframed as a weakness. Every success was twisted into a failure. Every act of independence was characterized as incompetence. Brandon's deposition was even worse. Mrs. Wack, Washington has made several statements that suggest she believes family members are trying to steal from her, he testified. This paranoid thinking has escalated over the past year. She seems to view any suggestion about financial planning as a personal attack. He painted himself as the concerned son-in-law, worried about his wife's increasingly unstable mother. We've brought her multiple financial experts, all offering free consultations to help optimize her portfolio. She's refused all professional advice, claiming these licensed professionals are trying to scam her. The narrative they were building was clear. I was a paranoid, mentally declining old woman who needed protection from my own poor judgment. They were the loving family members trying to save me from myself. It was brilliant, evil, and completely false, but lies told by lawyers in depositions carry weight in court. Chapter 13. The Friends Who Showed Their True Colors. As word of the legal battle spread through my community, I learned who my real friends were. Some people I'd known for decades suddenly became unavailable. Phone calls went unreturned. Invitations to church events stopped coming. Dorothy, people are talking. My neighbor, Miss Geneva, told me one morning as I was checking my mail. They're saying, maybe you should consider what your daughter is trying to tell you. What do you mean? Maybe she's got a point about that big house. You are getting up in age. Even Miss Geneva, who had been checking on me every morning for 15 years, was starting to doubt my judgment. At church, the whispers followed me down the aisles. I could hear snippets of conversation. Wow, such a shame when families fight over money. That poor girl trying to help her mama. Sometimes older folks can't see what's best for them. Pastor Williams pulled me aside after service one Sunday. Sister Dorothy, I'm praying for your family situation. But I have to ask, have you considered that maybe the Lord is trying to tell you something through your daughter's concerns? Even my pastor was suggesting that maybe I should give up my life's work for the sake of family peace. The only person who stood firmly in my corner was my sister Marlene. Dorothy, don't you dare let them people gaslight you, she said during one of our phone conversations. I've been watching this game for 60 years. They want your money, period. All this talk about helping you is manipulation, plain and simple. But what if everybody else is right? What if I am being stubborn and paranoid? Baby sister, let me ask you something. 40 years ago, when you bought that first rundown house in Vine City, what did everybody say? They said I was crazy. And when you quit your job at the department store to flip houses full time, what did everybody say? They said I was making a mistake. And when you bought that big house in West End, what did everybody say? They said it was too much house for a single woman. And how did all those decisions work out for you? I was quiet for a moment. Dorothy Mae Washington, you have been making smart financial decisions since you were 20 years old. You built wealth from nothing in a system designed to keep black women poor. You own more property than most men twice your age. And now, when your own daughter wants to steal what you built, suddenly everybody thinks you don't know what you're doing. Marlene was right. The same people questioning my judgment now had been questioning it for decades. The difference was that now they had my own daughter leading the charge. You trust your gut, baby sister. It ain't failed you yet. Chapter 14. The Allies I Never Expected. While some friends abandoned me, others stepped up in ways that surprised me. Mrs. Patterson, one of my tenants, called me after she'd been interviewed by Brandon and Keisha's lawyers. Mrs. Washington, I don't know what kind of mess your family is trying to pull, but I told them lawyers the truth. You've been the best landlord I ever had in 30 years of renting. When my hot water heater broke last winter, you had a new one installed the same day. When my grandson needed a quiet place to study for his SATs, you let us use your community room for free. Mr. James, who owns the hardware store where I buy supplies for my properties, also reached out. Dorothy, I heard about what's happening with your family. I want you to know that in 15 years of doing business with you, you've never bounced a check, never been late on a payment, and never asked for anything you couldn't afford. You're one of the smartest business people I know. Even some people I barely knew started speaking up. Ms. Rodriguez, a real estate agent who had handled a few of my property purchases, called Patricia's office directly. I want to testify on Mrs. Washington's behalf, she told my lawyer. I've done dozens of deals with her over the years. She's always thoroughly researched every property, negotiated fair prices, and made sound investment decisions. The idea that she's mentally incompetent is absurd. These testimonials gave me strength, but they also highlighted how calculated Brandon and Keisha's attack was. They weren't just trying to steal my money. They were trying to destroy my reputation in the process. Dorothy, Patricia explained during one of our strategy sessions. What they're doing is called predatory guardianship. It's more common than people realize. Adult children convince courts that their elderly parents are incompetent, get themselves appointed as guardians, and then liquidate all the assets. How is that legal? It's legal when it's done legitimately to protect vulnerable elderly people. But the system is easily abused. Once someone is declared incompetent and a guardian is appointed, that person essentially has no rights. The guardian can sell their house, move them to a nursing home, and control every aspect of their life. The thought terrified me. I could end up in some state-run facility while Brandon and Keisha lived in my restored Victorian mansion and collected rent from my properties. But we have evidence that they attacked you. Yes, and that's our strongest defense. But Dorothy, I need you to understand something. Even if we win this case, your relationship with your daughter is probably over forever. I had already accepted that painful reality. Chapter 15. The Deposition from Hell. In November, I had to give my own deposition. Brandon and Keisha's lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Susan Crawford, was ruthless. Mrs. Washington, isn't it true that you've never sought professional financial advice for your portfolio? I've managed my own investments successfully for 25 years. That wasn't my question. Have you ever consulted with a licensed financial advisor? No. Have you ever had your properties professionally appraised for insurance purposes? I have insurance on all my properties. Again, that's not what I asked. Have you had professional appraisals done? This went on for hours. Every answer I gave was twisted or used to set up the next trap. Mrs. Washington, you live alone in a 6,000 square foot house. Don't you think that's excessive for one person? I think it's my house to live in however I choose. But wouldn't a smaller, more manageable living space be more practical at your age? I'm 60 years old, not 90. Mrs. Washington, do you have any difficulty with daily activities like cooking, cleaning, or managing your medications? No. Do you have someone who checks on you regularly? My neighbor, Miss Geneva, checks on me every morning. So you do need someone to check on you? She checks on me because we're friends, not because I need supervision. But isn't it true that without Miss Geneva's daily check-ins, you could fall or have a medical emergency and no one would know? Every answer was a trap. If I said I was independent, they painted me as isolated and at risk. If I mentioned my support system, they painted me as needy and dependent. The worst part came when Ms. Crawford started asking about my relationship with Keisha. Mrs. Washington, your daughter testified that you've become increasingly paranoid and suspicious over the past year. How do you respond to that? I respond that my daughter is trying to steal my property, so a little suspicion seems appropriate. Are you aware that your daughter has a successful career and doesn't need your money? If she doesn't need my money, why is she trying so hard to get it? Mrs. Washington, isn't it possible that your daughter is genuinely concerned about your welfare and you're misinterpreting her motives? No. You don't think it's possible that a loving daughter might be worried about her aging mother? A loving daughter wouldn't bring strangers to my house to have me declared crazy. Mrs. Washington, do you love your daughter? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Of course I love my daughter. And do you believe she loves you? I was quiet for a long moment. I believe she used to love me. Mrs. Washington, isn't it possible that she still loves you, but she's worried about your judgment? No. If she loved me, she wouldn't be trying to take everything I worked for. Or maybe if she loves you, she's trying to protect you from making financial mistakes. The gaslighting was masterful. Even under oath in a legal proceeding, they were trying to make me doubt my own perceptions. By the time the deposition was over, I felt emotionally drained and mentally exhausted, but I had held my ground. You did well, Patricia told me afterward. You stayed consistent with your story and didn't let her rattle you. It doesn't feel like I did well. Dorothy, that's exactly how it's supposed to feel. They're trying to make you doubt yourself, but you came across as competent, coherent, and justifiably angry about what's being done to you. Still, I left that deposition feeling like I'd been put through a meat grinder. Chapter 16, The Investigator's Report. One advantage we had was that Patricia had hired a private investigator to look into Brandon and Keisha's finances. What he found was damning. Mrs. Washington, the investigator, a former police detective named Robert Thompson, reported, "Your daughter and son-in-law are in serious financial trouble." He spread out documents across Patricia's conference table. They owe $247,000 in various debts: credit cards, student loans, their mortgage, car payments. Their monthly expenses exceed their income by about $3,000. How are they surviving? They're not. They've been juggling payments, using cash advances from one credit card to pay the minimum on another. They're in what we call a debt spiral. And that's why they want my money. It gets worse. Look at this. He showed me bank statements obtained through legal discovery. 3 months ago, Brandon took out a $50,000 personal loan against his 401k. The money was supposed to be for home improvements. Instead, he used it to pay their lawyer's retainer fee. They borrowed money to sue me? It appears so. And here's the real kicker. They've already signed a contract with a luxury real estate agent to list your house. They had it valued at $5.2 million and they're planning to split the proceeds. My blood ran cold. They're planning to sell my house before they even win the case? The contract is contingent on them gaining legal control of your assets. But yes, they've already decided what they're going to do with your property. Patricia was furious. This proves premeditation. They didn't stumble into this guardianship petition out of concern for Dorothy's welfare. They planned it as a way to solve their financial problems. The investigator had more. I also interviewed some of their friends and colleagues. According to multiple sources, Brandon has been bragging about his future inheritance for over a year. He told people at his gym that he was going to quit his job once his mother-in-law's estate issues got resolved. Estate issues. I'm not even dead yet. He also told a coworker that older people don't understand modern financial strategies and sometimes need help making rational decisions. Every piece of evidence painted the same picture. Brandon and Keisha had planned this theft down to the smallest detail. The Concerned Family Member Act was just that, an act. But the most damaging evidence was yet to come. Mrs. Washington, did you know that your daughter has been researching nursing homes? What? She's visited 3 different facilities in the past 2 months, high-end places, but still, she's been asking about availability and pricing for memory care units. The room was silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just planning to take control of my assets, I said slowly. They were planning to have me institutionalized. That appears to be the plan, Thompson confirmed. Get guardianship, liquidate the assets, and then claim you need specialized care that can only be provided in a facility. Even though there's nothing wrong with me. Even though there's nothing wrong with you. I felt sick to my stomach. My own daughter was planning to steal my life's work and then lock me away in a nursing home. Patricia, can we use this in court? We absolutely can. This completely destroys their narrative about being concerned family members. This is evidence of a calculated scheme to defraud an elderly person. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like we might actually win. Chapter 17, The Unexpected Witness. 2 weeks before our court date, we got a call that changed everything. Mrs. Washington, this is Dr. Richardson. I was the psychiatrist who came to your house for the competency evaluation. I remembered him, the man who had tried to leave when Brandon and Keisha attacked me. Dr. Richardson, what can I do for you? Actually, I'd like to do something for you. I want to testify on your behalf. Patricia and I looked at each other in shock. Doctor, you were hired by the opposing side, Patricia said. I was hired to conduct an objective evaluation. What I witnessed in Mrs. Washington's home was elder abuse, not mental incompetence. I've been thinking about it for months, and I can't in good conscience stay silent. What exactly do you want to testify about? I want to tell the court that, in my professional opinion, Mrs. Anwani Washington showed no signs of cognitive impairment or mental illness during our brief interaction. She was articulate, coherent, and appropriately angry about being ambushed in her own home. And the attack? I want to testify that I witnessed her son-in-law strike her and her daughter, physically restrain her against her will. That's not family members trying to help someone. That's assault. Dr. Richardson's testimony would be devastating to Brandon and Keisha's case. A psychiatrist hired by their own lawyers was going to testify that I was mentally competent and that they had physically abused me. Doctor, I have to ask, why are you doing this? I asked. Mrs. Washington, I've been practicing geriatric psychiatry for 20 years. I've seen real cases of elderly people who need protection from their own poor judgment. But I've also seen family members abuse the system to steal from their relatives. What's happening to you is theft, plain and simple. Won't this hurt your relationship with the lawyers who hired you? Probably. But I took an oath to do no harm. Staying silent while an elderly woman is defrauded would violate that oath. After he hung up, Patricia was grinning ear to ear. Dorothy, we just went from having a strong case to having an unwinnable case for the other side. You really think so? I think Brandon and Keisha are about to learn a very expensive lesson about what happens when you mess with the wrong woman. Chapter 18, The Trial. The courtroom was packed on the day of our hearing. Word had spread through my community and dozens of people showed up to support me. My tenants, my neighbors, my church family, they filled every available seat. Brandon and Keisha sat at the plaintiff's table with their high-priced lawyers. Keisha wouldn't look at me, but Brandon stared me down like he was trying to intimidate me. Not today, I thought, not anymore. Judge Patricia Martinez called the court to order. She was a middle-aged Latina woman with a reputation for being tough but fair. This is a petition for guardianship filed by Keisha Mitchell and Brandon Mitchell, seeking to be appointed guardians for Dorothy Mae Washington. The petitioners claim that Mrs. Washington is mentally incompetent and unable to manage her financial affairs. Ms. Crawford stood up to give her opening statement. Your Honor, this is a tragic case of an elderly woman whose judgment has become so impaired that she can no longer make rational decisions about her welfare. Mrs. Washington is sitting on millions of dollars in assets while living alone in an unsafe environment, refusing all professional advice, and showing signs of paranoid thinking. She painted a picture of a confused, isolated old woman who needed protection from her own poor choices. The petitioners, Mrs. Washington's daughter and son-in-law, are not seeking this guardianship for personal gain. They are successful professionals who are genuinely concerned about Mrs. Washington's welfare. Then Patricia stood up for our response. Your Honor, this case is not about an elderly woman who needs protection. This case is about predatory family members who are drowning in debt and see their relatives' assets as the solution to their financial problems. She laid out our evidence methodically. Brandon and Keisha's crushing debt, their contract to sell my house, Brandon's bragging about his future inheritance, and Keisha's visits to nursing homes. The petitioners didn't stumble into this guardianship petition out of concern. They planned it as a way to steal Mrs. Washington's life's work. The first witness was Brandon himself. Under oath, he tried to maintain his concerned son-in-law persona. Your Honor, I love Mrs. Washington like my own mother. I'm only trying to help her make decisions that are in her best interest. Mr. Mitchell, Patricia asked during cross-examination, isn't it true that you owe over $200,000 in various debts? That's not relevant to this case. Isn't it true that 3 months ago you borrowed $50,000 from your retirement account to pay for this legal action? We needed legal representation. And isn't it true that you've already signed a contract to sell Mrs. Washington's house for $5.2 million? The courtroom was silent as Brandon squirmed in his seat. That was just planning for the future. Planning to sell someone else's house? Planning to help Mrs. Washington liquidate assets that she can't properly manage. Assets that she successfully acquired and managed for 25 years? Your Honor, I object, Ms. Crawford interrupted. This line of questioning is irrelevant. Overruled, Judge Martinez said. I want to hear about the defendant's financial situation. Patricia continued her attack. Mr. Mitchell, did you tell a colleague at your gym that you were planning to quit your job once your mother-in-law's estate issues got resolved? I don't recall saying that. Did you tell people that older people don't understand modern financial strategies? I might have said something like that in general conversation. And did you physically strike Mrs. Washington in her own home? She was being unreasonable. I was trying to calm her down. By hitting her? It was barely a tap. A tap that left a bruise on her face. Brandon was falling apart on the witness stand. Every answer made him look worse. When Keisha testified, it was even more painful to watch. Your Honor, I love my mother. Everything I'm doing is because I'm worried about her. Ms. Mitchell, Patricia said during cross-examination, have you visited nursing homes in the past 2 months? I was just researching options in case she ever needed care. Memory care unit specifically? I wanted to be prepared. Prepared for what? Your mother shows no signs of memory problems. She's been acting paranoid and suspicious, or she's been acting appropriately cautious because her daughter and son-in-law were planning to steal from her. That's not what we were doing. Then why did you physically attack your mother when she refused to cooperate with your plans? Keisha started crying on the witness stand. I didn't mean to hurt her. I was just frustrated. She wouldn't listen to reason. What you call reason, Mrs. Mitchell, most people would call theft. But the most damaging testimony came from Dr. Richardson. Your Honor, I was hired by the petitioners to evaluate Mrs. Washington's mental competence. In my professional opinion, she showed no signs of cognitive impairment or mental illness. Doctor, what did you observe during your visit to Mrs. Washington's home? I observed an elderly woman being physically assaulted by her family members when she refused to comply with their demands. In your expert opinion, was this the behavior of concerned family members? No, Your Honor. This was the behavior of individuals attempting to coerce an elderly person into surrendering control of her assets. The cross-examination by Ms. Crawford was brutal, but Dr. Richardson held his ground. Doctor, isn't it possible that Mrs. Washington's refusal to accept help could be a sign of impaired judgment? Ms. Crawford, refusing to sign over millions of dollars to people who are planning to steal from you is not impaired judgment. It's excellent judgment. By the time we finished presenting our case, Brandon and Keisha looked defeated. Their lawyers were whispering frantically, probably trying to figure out if they could withdraw the petition without losing face. But Judge Martinez had heard enough. Chapter 19. The Verdict. This court has reviewed all the evidence presented, Judge Martinez began, and I find the following. First, there is no credible evidence that Dorothy Washington suffers from any cognitive impairment or mental illness that would render her incompetent to manage her affairs. Second, the evidence clearly shows that the petitioners, Keisha Mitchell and Brandon Mitchell, are in severe financial distress and stand to benefit significantly from gaining control of Mrs. Washington's assets. Third, the evidence shows that the petitioners have engaged in a pattern of manipulation, harassment, and physical abuse in their attempts to coerce Mrs. Washington into surrendering her property. Fourth, the evidence shows that this guardianship petition was not filed out of genuine concern for Mrs. Washington's welfare, but as part of a calculated scheme to gain access to her wealth. I held my breath. Therefore, this court hereby denies the petition for guardianship. Mrs. Pocos, Dorothy Washington, retains full control over her person and her property. Furthermore, this court finds that the petitioners have engaged in elder abuse and attempted fraud. I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution. The courtroom erupted in applause. My supporters were cheering, hugging each other, wiping away tears of joy, but I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at Keisha. My daughter was sobbing at the plaintiff's table, her head in her hands. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old love, the old protectiveness. She was still my baby girl, even after everything she had done. Then I remembered the feel of her hands in my hair, yanking, pulling, hurting me because I wouldn't give her my money. The flicker died. Brandon was arguing with his lawyers, his face red with anger. When he saw me looking, he mouthed something that looked like, "This isn't over." But it was over. Judge Martinez had spoken. The law was on my side. As people filed out of the courtroom, Patricia put her arm around my shoulders. "Dorothy, you did it. You beat them." "We did it," I corrected her. "I couldn't have done this alone." But even in victory, I felt hollow. I had won the legal battle, but I had lost my daughter forever. Chapter 20, The Aftermath. The criminal charges were filed 3 weeks later. Brandon was charged with assault and elder abuse. Keisha was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. They both pled guilty to reduced charges rather than face trial. Brandon got 6 months in jail and 5 years probation. Keisha got probation and community service. But the real punishment was financial. Their legal fees had bankrupted them. They lost their house in Alpharetta, had to sell both cars, and file for bankruptcy protection. The last I heard, they were living in a rental apartment in College Park, and Brandon was working as a used car salesman. Meanwhile, I went back to my life. My beautiful Victorian mansion felt bigger and quieter than before, but it was still mine. My rental properties continued generating income. My investments continued growing. I hired a property management company to handle the day-to-day operations of my rentals. Not because I couldn't do it myself, but because I wanted more time to enjoy my life. I started traveling, something I'd always put off while building my business. London, Paris, Rome, Egypt. I saw the world on my own terms, staying in nice hotels, eating in good restaurants, buying whatever caught my eye. I also started a scholarship fund for young Black women studying business or real estate. If my own daughter couldn't appreciate what I had built, maybe I could help other daughters achieve their dreams. The hardest part was losing my granddaughter. I haven't seen Zoe since the court case. Keisha moved them out of state, to Tennessee, I heard, and changed their phone numbers. Every night I pray that someday, when Zoe is older, she'll want to know her grandmother's side of the story. I've written her letters that I keep in a box, documenting everything that happened so she'll understand why her mama and I don't talk anymore. Chapter 21. The Lessons Learned. People ask me if I regret fighting back, if I wish I had just given them some money to keep the peace. The answer is absolutely not. Money changes people, but it doesn't create who they are. It reveals who they've always been. Keisha and Brandon showed me their true characters when they thought my money was within reach. A daughter who truly loved me would never have brought strangers to my home to declare me crazy. A daughter who respected me would never have tried to have me institutionalized against my will. A daughter who cared about my welfare would never have put her hands on me in anger. The woman who attacked me in my kitchen wasn't the little girl I raised. She was a stranger wearing my daughter's face, consumed by greed and desperation. I learned that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Family doesn't mean safety. And sometimes the people closest to you are the ones most willing to destroy you. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. At 60 years old, I fought off a legal attack that would have destroyed most people. I stood up to family members, lawyers, and a system designed to protect elderly people by taking away their rights. I learned that success makes you a target, even within your own family, especially within your own family. Most importantly, I learned that everything I sacrificed to build wealth was worth it, not for the money itself, but for the freedom and security it provides. The freedom to tell anyone, including my own child, to go to hell when they try to take advantage of me. Chapter 22. Moving forward today. I'm 61 years old and worth approximately $8 million. My properties have continued to appreciate, my investments have grown, and I've proven that an elderly Black woman can defend herself against predators, even when those predators are her own family. I have new friends now, women who understand what it means to build something from nothing and protect it from those who want to tear it down. We meet for lunch every week, sharing war stories and celebrating each other's successes. I have new purpose. The Scholarship Fund has helped 12 young women start their own businesses. Watching them succeed gives me more joy than any family dinner ever did. I have new peace. My house is quiet, but it's peaceful quiet, not lonely quiet. No one is scheming in my living room. No one is pressuring me to make decisions that benefit them. No one is questioning my judgment or my competence. I sleep well at night, knowing that every door in my house is locked and every asset in my portfolio is protected. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just given them the money. Would we still be a family? Would I still get to see my granddaughter? Then I remember that they weren't asking for help. They were demanding control. They didn't want some of my money, they wanted all of it. They weren't trying to include me in their plans. They were trying to eliminate me from my own life. There was no compromise that would have satisfied their greed and preserved my dignity. So I chose dignity. Chapter 23. The Message. If you're reading this story, maybe you're in a similar situation. Maybe your own family members are circling like vultures, talking about your best interests while calculating their inheritance. Here's what I want you to know. You don't owe your children your life's work just because you gave them life. You don't owe your family your financial security just because they're struggling with theirs. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you spend, save, or invest your own money. Your judgment isn't automatically impaired just because you're over 60. Your independence isn't automatically dangerous just because you live alone. Your success isn't automatically suspicious just because you achieved it without a college degree. Fight for what's yours. Fight for your right to make your own decisions. Fight for your dignity, your autonomy, and your peace of mind. The legal system can be intimidating, but it works when you have good representation and solid evidence. Document everything. Record conversations if your state allows it. Keep detailed financial records. Build a paper trail that proves your competence and their greed. Don't let anyone gaslight you into thinking that protecting yourself is paranoid. Don't let anyone convince you that giving up control is in your best interests. Don't let anyone tell you that family loyalty requires financial submission. Most importantly, don't let fear of loneliness make you vulnerable to exploitation. Better to be alone and independent than surrounded by people who see you as a paycheck. Epilogue. The real victory. It's been 8 months since the court case ended, and I'm writing this from my sunroom, looking out at the garden I planted and maintained for 20 years. The tomatoes are coming in beautifully, and the roses I pruned last winter are blooming like crazy. This morning I got a letter from one of my scholarship recipients. She's opening her own catering business and wanted to thank me for helping make it possible. She included a photo of herself in front of her new storefront, beaming with pride and possibility. That photo is worth more to me than any family dinner ever was. Yesterday, I closed on another property, a duplex in Grant Park that I'll renovate and rent out. The young couple selling it had inherited it from a grandmother and had no idea how to manage rental property. They were happy to sell to someone who would take care of it properly. Next month, I'm flying to Morocco with my travel group. We're going to ride camels in the Sahara Desert and shop in the markets of Marrakesh. After that, we're thinking about Thailand. I'm living the life I built on my own terms, with my own money, making my own decisions. That's the real victory. Not beating Brandon and Keisha in court, although that felt pretty good. Not keeping my money away from people who would have wasted it, although that was important. The real victory is knowing that at 61 years old, I'm still the same strong, smart, determined woman who bought that first rundown house in Vine City 43 years ago. They tried to make me doubt myself. They tried to make me believe I was too old, too confused, too paranoid to manage my own life. They failed. I know who I am. I know what I've accomplished. I know what I'm worth. And I'm not talking about money. I'm Dorothy Mae Washington, and I built this life brick by brick, dollar by dollar, decision by decision, and ain't nobody, not my daughter, not her husband, not their lawyers, not the whole damn system, gonna take that away from me. If that makes me a difficult old woman, so be it. I'd rather be difficult than defeated. I'd rather be alone than exploited. I'd rather be feared than pitied, and I'd rather be free than family. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. End author's note. This story is fiction, but elder financial abuse is a real and growing problem in America. According to the National Council on Aging, elderly Americans lose approximately $36 billion annually to financial exploitation, often by their own family members. If you or someone you know is experiencing elder abuse, contact the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1118 or visit www.eldercare.acl.gov for resources and support.